welcome to the beautiful series. I'm Hannah Viviers. Just over a year ago, we brought you the story of Nishani Ford, a woman who was rising in her career. She was speaking on renowned platforms such as TED, and yet in her own life, Nishani was fighting the fight of her life. She was trying to navigate her family through the drug addiction of her oldest son, Joshua. At the time of our interview, Nishani had no idea where Joshua was. He'd been battling with addiction for almost 10 years. But here's the beautiful part about that story. Not long after we did the interview with Nishani, Joshua called his mom. They hadn't spoken for a while, and he told her that he wanted to come home. He had done it a couple of times, and who was to tell if this time it was going to stick? Remember, this was a young man who had overdosed almost 22 times, and it seemed as though his situation was hopeless. Everybody who had worked with him before, when he decided that he wanted to come home this time, they didn't believe that he was going to be clean, and if he was going to get clean, that he would stay clean. It was not an easy one, but this is a story of a family that chose to not give up against all odds.
Addiction steals your child from you. There is my son, and then there's the addict. And addiction stole my boy from me. And all that time that he was gone, I was grieving for my son. Because it stole our dreams, it stole time together, it stole family time together. All the dreams. You know, when you hold your baby for the first time in your arms and you look into this beautiful child's face and you fall in love, your heart pops with so much love. You have so many aspirations, so many dreams. Addiction stole all of that. It stole many Christmases, many birthdays, many beautiful family moments. They were stolen from us by addiction. And living with that daily is grief. Living with that daily is grief, knowing that you may never see this child again. So the first time my son asked me for help, he was 12, going on to 13 years old. He had been missing for 2 days, and after a search he came home, sat on my bed and uttered these words, "Mum, I'm on heroin, please help me." That was the first time he asked for help. The last time he came to me was 10 years later, when I got a phone call from the street that he had been living on for almost a year, and he said to me, "Mom, I want to come home, please help me." In between that was 10 years of living with active addiction. I was waiting for that call, I was praying for that call, and the one thing I know about Joshua is that he didn't lie to me. So I always knew what the state of affairs was, and when he said he wanted help and he was going to come home, I knew he was serious. You know, he's always wanted to come home. He's been in 7 rehabs and 4 psychiatric hospitals. And I think he didn't realize how deep he got into it. Before long, it became more than a choice. It became a craving in the body, because addiction is a disease. I think it's easy to think, so I believe that people do have choice, but this is more than that. It is something that gets into your system, and it becomes a disease where your choice gets taken. Nobody grows up thinking, hey, one day I'm going to grow up and be a drug addict and a criminal and a gangster. Nobody grows up thinking that, but it does happen. And somewhere along the line, the choice gets taken away from you because you are so driven by this craving within you that you have no control over it. So at some point, I don't think he had a choice. And I think if we label that, Hannah, if we label that, it can be quite serious, because then we're saying, well, it's a choice and you can change it any time. And I don't think people have the ability to do that. I don't think so. If we do that, we border on the danger of attaching a moral judgment to this. And there isn't any.
Basically, my dad was abusive, and every day when me and my brother would come home, we'd go home, hide in our room and wait for my mom to get home. And then we'd come out and go outside and play. And so my mom and dad were done fighting every day. And the one morning on my way to school, my dad and mom had a huge fight, and my dad almost killed my mom. And he actually beat us up also. And my mom had to put makeup on us to go to school to cover our eye. And that day at school, there was a drug ed talk at school. And they were talking about heroin and how fast it kills people. Like, you can just take it once, and if you put too much into your veins, you'll die, and all sorts of crazy things. And it wasn't a person of experience talking, it was one of those drug ed people. So at the time, I thought this person knew what they were talking about, and I was listening to this chat. And right after the drug ed talk, I went and jumped the school fence and went, because I knew down the road from my house they sold heroin. And I went and bought my first bag of heroin and smoked it with the homeless people. And I overdosed and I was robbed. And that's when my mom told you I went missing for 2 days. Yeah.
So I believe I was a good mum. Addiction doesn't have any classism. It doesn't choose a person who is not a good mom. But I must say that I second-guessed myself as a parent a million times. I agonized and I criticized myself continuously, thinking how I could have done things differently. Did I miss something? Is this my fault? He's a baby. He's 12, 13 years old. I should have been different. I should have noticed. I should have listened more. I should have worked less. But the thing is, drugs don't choose. It can happen to anybody. And as scary as that is, it can happen. And I may not have made all the right choices or been a perfect parent, but bad parenting doesn't cause addiction. So I do believe I was a good mother. And I believe that through all of this, I had to fight for myself as well, to keep myself alive, to keep my younger son alive. And that made me a damn good parent. So Joshua started when he was 10, and we learned that in retrospect. And I think there was a lot of things going on in our lives at that stage. We were going through a divorce, things were changing, we were moving into a new home. Everything was in flux. And you think, oh, this kid is sleeping late. He's losing jackets. We just thought, he's careless. He's going into puberty. There's lots of change. He's becoming a teenager. So the first thing is you don't suspect drugs. You think, well, this is just a part of growing up, of who he is.
The lady said that it makes you numb and that you don't feel anything before you die. And that you're completely numb to your emotions and physical pain. It wasn't so much the numb to the physical pain. I was used to that. My dad beat me up. It was numb to the emotions. I wanted to hide and subside the emotion that I was feeling at the time. Because every boy's dad is their hero. And mine wasn't my hero. He was more of the person I was scared of at the time. At the time when I started drugs, I really did want to die. I did a lot of addiction scale tests and stuff like that over and over. I was in a terminal phase of addiction, which was, I was using to die. I've got countless amounts of overdoses and hospitalizations. I've currently got a heart arrhythmia I had that at the age of 18, which is an irregularity in my heart because of drug overdoses. Yeah.
One of the things that I would have done differently with my children is that, we talk to our children about sex education, we talk to them about health issues. We talk to them about the music they listen to, especially at that age. I would also talk to them about drugs, and not from a place of, oh my gosh, you're going to become an addict. No, but from a place of creating awareness. I don't think I created that awareness enough. And it's something that I would have spoken to them about more openly.
Like I said, my dad was an alcoholic and he surrounded himself with a lot of friends that were on drugs and did that sort of thing. So I was surrounded by it my entire life. So I knew about it my entire life. Like, I think it was grade 1 or grade 2, you get that, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I put Tupac and Biggie Smalls on my what do you want to be when you grow up. I wanted to be a gangster. Because my dad's friends had these big cars and women around their house, and we were struggling, we were poor. But these people had so much money and they didn't work. I was confused. So I saw that my entire life. So I understood that stealing and making away paid for things. I mean, I don't think my mom knows about it, but we were 7 years old, and I was stealing money at school and giving my little brother for hot dogs. I started stealing at a very young age. I was surrounded by it.
So my journal does say believe. And I wrote him letters when he was away. To be honest, Hannah, I don't know, as a mother, every cell in my body ached for this child. I would sometimes hear his voice call me at the gate. I would hear like, Ma, when he called me. And I would go to the gate and he wouldn't be there. For a long time, I slept with a stuffed toy, which he's had since birth, just to have some closeness to him. It was the times apart were heart-wrenching. It was as if my heart was ripped out of my own chest. It was one of the most devastating times, not knowing where your child is, not knowing if he's dead or alive.
Through the 10 years of addiction, I've overdosed, I think, more than 22 times, hospitalized. I've had guns held in my mouth. I've dared people to shoot them. I've been held up by gangsters. I was that guy that when people said you can't rob this guy because he's going to kill you, I went and stole from him and made it deliberate that he knew it was me so that he could try and kill me. Because I realized if the drugs weren't going to kill me, maybe the guy selling them would have killed me. But nothing worked. God had his hand over me this whole time. I don't know how to explain how I survived what I went through. I mean, I've been in drug houses where people were held in cages with pit bulls. I've been in houses where people are eaten by pigs. I've been affiliated with such horrible things in my life. And somehow God kept me safe. I don't know how to explain it, but through everything I've been through, my safe place was a crack house. I used to sleep inside of a house where people came to smoke and people came to store their stolen goods. That was my safe place at a stage. I'd go there so I could sleep and feel safe. And that's how addiction twisted it. I mean, I never through my whole 10 years thought I was a drug addict. I always told my mom, I can stop when I want to. I'm smoking because I like to smoke. But that's what addiction does to you. It warps your mindset. It warps your way of seeing things. I mean, what's wrong is right and what's right is just crazy. That's how addiction gets to you.
So addiction twists the whole parent-child relationship. So Joshua became a bully. He would ask for money. I would give him the money to keep the peace, knowing with a sinking feeling in the pit of my stomach that he would be using that money for drugs. I knew it, but it would mean a peaceful afternoon. So I did it. I gave it to him. When he got into trouble at school, I didn't let him face the consequences. I rescued him, especially when he was 12 and 13, the early days. I rescued him from the principal's office many times. And so it was a mother's love, and I had to come to terms with the fact that my love was actually killing him. My love was killing him.
Well, I knew that my mom didn't want me home as long as I was on drugs. And I knew that I wasn't going to leave drugs. I wasn't ready to leave it. All those years, my mom had tried. She tried putting me in and out of rehab. I jumped. I ran away from rehab. I ran away to the street. I ran away from home because I thought they didn't accept me for who I am. I thought drugs was who I am. I mean, I was 18 years old and I'd been smoking since I was 10. That's more than half my life. More than half my life was consumed by smoking, stealing, doing all these horrible things. So when people came to me and said, you need to change and stop doing this, I was like, so what do you want me to do? I've never done anything else. Even now, when people tell me you need to find work and do this and do that, I still struggle. I'm like, what am I going to do for work? All I know how to do is this. And then I have to find something new. I have to discover myself all over again. I'm 21 years old and it's like I'm 1 year old. I have to rediscover myself all over again, like a baby.
So I saw somebody who helped me to deal with my codependency. It was an addiction specialist, and she just called it as it was. And I had to make some hard choices for myself. I realized that I'm not the one using drugs, that I don't have to go through this. That I had a life and I had choices that I could make for myself.
For that parent who's blaming themselves, I tell them not to blame themselves, because it's not their fault their kid's going through what they're going through. Everybody makes choices. It's not always the right choice. Sometimes it's the wrong choice. You can't force your kid to make the right choices. And unfortunately, sometimes that choice your child makes is addiction. And you as a parent, you can't blame yourself for your child going through that. But at the same time, you can't beat yourself up, because you beating yourself up, you're not doing anything about it. You know what I mean? Like, my mom beat herself up for so many years, and then she never did anything about it. She just enabled me, because she was too blind to the fact that I was killing myself. Until the day she stopped blaming herself, and she said, this boy is killing himself. And then she stopped. She cut me off and stopped enabling me. And that's what made me realize that I'm killing myself. I mean, if you as a parent are too blind and you're blaming yourself and enabling your child, you are technically telling your child that it's okay to smoke drugs.
I had to make some choices to help keep Jared and I safe, because Joshua was very volatile at times. It could get violent. So I had to make some choices to keep Jared and I safe at all times, at all costs. And that meant, I'll never forget the time that Joshua came to my gate, and he had a gun in his mouth, and somehow the trigger didn't go off. And he was traumatized by that. And he had come to my gate, but he was high. And he wanted to come in, and he wanted to be comforted. And I closed my gate. And I think that was the most heart-wrenching thing that I had to do. But my deal was that as long as he was on drugs, he would not be able to come home. Even when he came home the last time, he had to be in a rehab for 3 months clean before he could come home. And that was to safeguard ourselves, because we'd been through a decade of pain, of frustration, of being scared in our own home.
So what made me change? Well, my mom prayed for me constantly throughout my addiction and throughout my time on the street. She was praying for me and had faith that I would come home. I can't have any other answer other than that, because somehow that prayer got through. And within the last month of my addiction, I couldn't steal, I couldn't pickpocket, I couldn't do anything wrong anymore. I was literally begging and hoping that I could get by, and reality was just hitting me to such a stage that I'd ask someone for bread and they'd tell me, hey, you Totsi, go steal the bread, go, get out of here. And then you're like, is this what you want people to think of you? And then I got to the point where I was like, you know what, I've got a home, I've got somewhere to go. And someone on the street actually made contact with my mom behind my back and told me the next day that I'm meeting with my mom for breakfast. And I was like, what? And they're like, yes, we've made contact with your mom and you're going home. And I was like, and I just broke down in tears. And then that night, a gun got held in my mouth. And they made me beg for my life, like literally cry and beg for my life. And the gun jammed and I ran. And that's when I knew I've got to get out of this life. I've got the opportunity to get out, so I need to take it. And I took it, and I haven't looked back since.
There was one time that we had to protect ourselves because Joshua had, when he was high, it caused psychosis. And like my son disappeared, and there was this shadow of my child in my child's body, but I knew he wasn't there. And so I don't think he was aware of what he was doing. But there was a time where Joshua held us hostage for 3 hours with a weapon, where Jared was hidden in a cupboard in his room. And I had to negotiate with Joshua for that time to try and keep us alive. He did try to stab me, but somehow the knife missed, and the handle cracked my ribs. He cracked a number of glass tumblers on my head, so I had fractures in my skull and blood all over my kitchen. It was devastating, but we got out of that scenario, and we then put Joshua into a psychiatric ward. It was that or prison, and we chose the psychiatric ward because, as harsh as that sounds, it was a way to help him, because I knew he wasn't there. And so he was in a psychiatric ward for 7 days, and we did not go and see him. Friends went and saw him, and other people went and saw him, but we didn't go and see him. But it was just to give him 7 days to detox in order for me to arrange for him to go into a long-term rehab.
That night with the gun jamming, it was the first night I realized I didn't want to die. I don't know what it was about it. Life literally flashes before your eyes when you're about to die. Like, you see everything. And I didn't see any good in my life. And I didn't want to die knowing I did nothing good. Especially for my family.
So I've got a younger son, Jared, and I always call him the unsung hero in our family. He's been the one that kind of held it together, but it hasn't been without a price. Recently he had a fallout, and he himself ended up in a psychiatric hospital for a few days for depression. So he suffered from depression, anxiety. He's got a chronic ulcer. He's only 17 years old at the moment, but he suffered from chronic ulcers just from anxiety. And, you know, it hasn't been easy. It hasn't been easy. He also went through a period where he was cutting just so that he could, because he was numbing his pain. He was also in so much pain. So it hasn't been easy on him. It hasn't been easy on us as a family. We've had to work through a lot of stuff. So some of the things that he said in the period before Joshua came home was that he was scared, that he didn't want Joshua to come back home, that our lives would be ruined if Joshua came back home. In fact, the last time that Joshua got home, Jared left home for 2 weeks and went and stayed at a friend's place until he could see that Joshua was serious and that he was not going to cause us any harm.
People did say that when I went into rehab the last time, they did an addiction, I don't know, they called it an ADS test. So you answer and they basically see where you are on the addiction scale. They've got experimental, intermediate, and I was past the terminal phase at this stage. I was 150 points past the terminal stage. So they had no idea what to do with me. I mean, no counselor at the rehab would work with me, only Ivan, because all of them knew from the last time I was there, I was extremely difficult. I didn't pitch up for counseling. I swore at counselors. But Ivan was willing to give me a chance because I reminded him a lot of himself. And he told me he's gonna fight for me, and he's gonna fight with me. Whether it's physically, emotionally, he's gonna fight with me, because he's gonna fight for my life. And he did. I really thank him for that. He fought for my life. I was in counseling every day, and that man drilled me. He made me go into things I put aside. Things you block out, he made me dig into them. And he made me realize, like, addiction I was proud to be a junkie. And he made me realize it's not a thing to be proud of. It's not a... And a lot of the people told me, you're not going to make it. You're not going to get past a year clean. You won't even make 6 months. The moment you leave this rehab, you're done. But Ivan always told me, you know what, you're going to prove these people wrong because you're hard-headed and I know you. And I think that's one of the reasons I did stay clean. I'm very hard-headed and I like proving people wrong. And also I've got a daughter, London. She's my rock and my safe place. Every time I have a craving or I think of using, I just look at that child's sweet face and she brings me back to her.
As a mother, to try and make a choice and to try and balance this between 2 children it's been heart-wrenching. It's been absolutely heart-wrenching. I understand both sides of the coin. But I think for me, I became the facilitator of grace, of forgiveness, and of love. And we've had to work through all of those things as a family.
Somehow, even when I was on the street, every single Sunday I found myself in church. And it wasn't because they'd give me food or they'd give me money. No, I didn't even accept those. The food I accepted, but the money I wouldn't, because I didn't want to use the church's money on something I'd smoke. And I knew I'd smoke the money, so I never accepted money from the church. Somehow, every Sunday I found myself in church. I'm still flabbergasted how, and every Sunday I found myself sober. I'm still flabbergasted how to this day. That's the power of a praying mother.
So we started Wholehearted. It has been a passion and a dream to start an organization, and we've had to wait many, many moons to be able to do that. We've started a non-profit organization with Joshua and Jared as directors to actually help people in addiction and to work in the space of addiction and recovery and to bring hope into the world again. We want to make a difference in people's lives. We want to say that it's not the end, no matter how dark it is. And we want to say that there is help and that there is hope and that there is a way. So we are, this is a disease that is rooted in shame and guilt, and we want to break the silence around that, and we want to say, actually, let's connect as human beings, and let me show you that it's possible.
You never know that recovery is lasting. It's a day-to-day thing. I mean, today I'm fine, tomorrow I could slip up. That's recovery for you. You've got to fight every day, and you've got to trust in God every day. You've got to do it just for today. You can't expect tomorrow to be roses and rainbows. You've got to pray for the best but prepare for the worst. I mean, since I've been in recovery and I've come home, a drug lord has come to my house. He's offered me a gun and drugs to come back and work for him. The police have picked me up. They've put me back in the system. They've put me back in court. A lot of things will fight against you when you go into recovery. Everything will go against you. They'll try to put you back on the street. They'll try. It's all up to you to fight for what you believe in. I mean, back in the day I didn't fight. I had nothing to lose. Now I've got everything to lose. I've got a family. I've got a home. So it's all a choice. I mean, every day is a battle in recovery. It never gets easier. It never gets easier. I mean, the cravings get less, but recovery never gets easier.
There's a lot of help for the addict. There's counselors, there's support groups, there's a lot of help. But there's very little to no help for the supporters and the people who love addicts. And, you know, addiction is a disease that affects the whole family. And so we want to offer support to the people that love addicts, the people who are devastated. I always say that we're devastated and left by the roadside to bleed, you know, while the addict goes off to a rehab to sort themselves out. We have to carry on. We have to carry on working 2 or 3 jobs to pay 10 to 15,000 rand a month for rehab support. The sacrifices that we have to make as a family are incredible. And people can get resentful about this and angry. There's a lot of anger that you have to work through. So Wholehearted offers a holistic approach to the entire system, if you want to call it, or to the entire circle of love around the addict. Okay. We've always believed in that, no matter how hard it's been. Sometimes that love requires that we lock the door to keep ourselves safe. Sometimes that love means that we open our arms and we embrace somebody. That love has changed many lives. It's changed our lives. It's God's love. And it's supernatural. And we have been able to come out of this almost unscathed by the horrors and the evilness of addiction. It's really evil. The things we've seen, the things we've had to do, the places we've had to go into have been horrifying. There is no gentle way to put this. But there is hope, and there's love, and there's just this wonderful smile on a child's face. And when I see my boys together, or when I hear them laughing in the lounge, I'm so grateful. It's something that I would never take for granted, to have both my boys, even if they're lounging around in front of the television playing games. I am so grateful. I'm so grateful that we've been given this chance.
The best part about being sober and being home is seeing the reconciliation with me and my family and me and my girlfriend and just everything that's going on. Like, I used to come home when I was on drugs and my mom would hide everything valuable in her room and lock the room. Now I come home and it's like everything is just there. They don't really care, you know what I mean? Like, and I used to have to sleep in the lounge because my mom was scared I'd steal things from my room and go sell them. Now I can sleep in my room and lock the door. She doesn't mind. She's not scared that because the door's locked I've snuck out somewhere and I'm not in the room. The reconciliation that God can do to a family is just amazing, because my family was broken. There's no other words for it. For that year and a half I was on the street, me and my mom did not speak. There was no, "Hi mom, I love you." There was no, "How are you doing?" There was no, I would come sometimes in a car and park up the road from our house and just watch her come home and watch my little brother come home, because I missed them, but there was a restraining order on me, so I couldn't see them. So now the best thing for me is that reconciliation that God has formed in our family, because now we can talk openly with one another.
My favorite part about Joshua coming home, and even though he's just turned 21, is his ability. He has such presence and he has such a magnetic personality that you feel him. Every wall, every brick in the home feels him. We feel him, you know. So having him home has been an absolute gift. Having him sing carols with us and saying to me in the car as we go home, "Mom, that's part of my childhood that's been restored." Having him insist on a 3-tier superhero cake for his birthday and toys to match have been an absolute gift. To see his childhood restored, to see him so free in his spirit, to see him so light in his heart, has been an absolute gift to me. I am just loving being his mom. I'm loving it.
The one thing I'd like to thank my mom and brother for is for always being there for me and for never giving up on me and for always being the rock I can fall back on. And for showing me love as a child, because I think if my mom never showed me that love as a child, I would have never come home.
Thank you so much for watching. If you would like to find out more about Wholehearted and about Nishani and Joshua's story, you can go and find them on Facebook, like their page, tell people you know who have something like this in their lives and who are probably battling through shame and guilt that they're going through this, and tell them that they don't have to lose hope, that they don't have to go through the shame that they're going through, and that there is hope for them. That's what this interview was about. We wish you love and we wish you hope.